Hey guys, what's happening? Thanks for tuning in, coming back and watching. I appreciate it. I hope you're doing well, staying safe, taking care of yourself, all those kind of things. And if you're new here, I'm Jim. Great to meet you. Thanks for stopping by. I make tutorial videos here every week showing you how I edit my photos using various software products. Today I'm using On1 Photo Raw 2021, and I'm going to develop a raw file and kind of walk through what I call the develop module. It's a develop tab. I don't know the official name for it. To me, it's a develop module, and what I'm doing there is kind of walk through, give you an overview of some of the things that you can do, because I'm in the midst of evaluating On1 Photo Raw 2021. It's kind of a mouthful to say, but Photo Raw, I'm going to call it. But I'm evaluating Photo Raw as a replacement for Lightroom for me. I mentioned that in my first impression video about Photo Raw, and there's a lot of things I like about the product. And so what I thought I would do is kind of walk through how I develop raw files, because for me that's one of the, that is like the primary step. If I know I'm going to crop the photo, I'll go ahead and crop it first. I might erase some things if there's some obvious blemishes or whatever. And after that, I'm going to go into the develop module and develop my raw file. So that's what this video is about. Here I am. Here's a photo, and I've already cropped it. As I mentioned, I like to do that first if I know I'm going to crop it. And this one was right for a 16:9. And then I popped over here to the develop module. And what I want to do is go through, there's 4 different sections basically. And if you have a raw file, it'll effectively default to turning on lens correction. And I think details as well. But what I'm going to do is walk through these 4 tabs. Some of them are going to be a bit quicker than others. I'm not going to do much on transform. I think that's a video by itself. I'm not going to do much on details either, but I'll touch on lens correction. I'm going to spend most of my time here, called tone and color. As the name implies, it's great for adjusting the light and the colors and really just getting your raw file to where you want it to be, either as a complete edit, which you can totally do, but for me, it's a great way to set the base photo, and from there, I would jump over to the effects tab, which is the next one, and that's where you get into all the fun filters and some of the different things that you can do creatively with your photos. So I'm going to start here, and starting at the top, just to touch on this, they do have camera profiles built in. So as you can see there, you can apply a specific look to your photo based on a profile. So if you come through here, it'll default to the standard profile, but as I hover over these, you will see how the photo changes to reflect what that profile will do for your photo. So there's quite a few here that are on one, and then there's some other ones, and then you can also import your own camera profiles. These are also known as DCP profiles, or digital camera profiles. I've used them in other apps, and they're a great way to give you a nice starting point, and from there you can continue to edit. I'm going to go ahead and leave it with On1 standard and then jump into my editing. Now the next thing you'll notice is there's a manual section, which is basically, hey, you're going to drive and do everything yourself. You're going to get into all these sliders and start making adjustments, which is what I'm going to do. But first I want to show you AI match and AI auto. AI match, so for example, if you're using an in-camera style, maybe a black and white, but you're still shooting raw, you'll have this AI match. And by the way, it's only going to be working or available on raw files, but it will match your photo in On1 to match what you saw on the back of your camera's LCD screen. So basically it'll match the embedded JPEG. Let's say if you're shooting like a black and white profile within your camera, it'll match that here. AI Auto, on the other hand, is basically automatically going to develop the tones and colors within the image. So if I click on that, you will see that it'll go ahead and apply adjustments based on the photo. Now the thing is, I like AI to help me do tasks that are kind of repetitive or boring or maybe hard, but I generally am not a fan of AI automatically tuning and toning and colorizing a photo for me. I like to have control. That's perfectly fine if you do that. It's just down to personal preference. I prefer to do things my way, for lack of a better word. And you will see when I clicked on it, it made some adjustments here. Highlights are different, midtones, shadows, things like that. And down here, the temperature and tint and saturation, all those things have been changed. So if I do a preview change, if I click on that, that's where I was, and that's where AI Auto got me. So it's a nice improvement. It's just not what I would necessarily do. So I'm going to go ahead and hit reset there and get back to my base photo and jump into the manual adjustments. Now these manual adjustments are fairly self-explanatory. It's no different here than it is somewhere else where you have exposure, contrast, highlights, midtone, shadows. I would just say be careful, because if you do things like if you really lift the shadows a whole lot, you could get a photo, while bright and evenly distributed in terms of the light, it could start to look like an HDR, for example. So I see people that maybe want to lift the midtones and the shadows to really get good visibility, but then you kind of have this HDR kind of looking photo. Again, it comes down to personal preference. I tend not to do that, even though I shoot HDR sometimes and enjoy it. I prefer to have a little bit of shadow and some midtone in my photo because I kind of want to maintain a little bit of mystery. So I'll tend to adjust things slightly and then come in and just basically customize to my taste. And by the way, every photo, of course, is going to be different. And so this is totally a season to taste kind of thing, just the way I feel any editing is. It is season to taste. Set it up the way you want to set it up. And if you want to lift the midtones and the shadows a whole lot and have a really bright, evenly distributed photo in terms of the light distribution, you know what? Go for it. That's totally your prerogative. I'm just talking about what I typically do. I might add in a little bit of structure, and you do have a haze slider here, so you can either go to the right, kind of increase that, and if you go to the left, you can see how it's kind of taking down the light there. I'm going to go ahead and double click on haze just to reset it, and you can do that. So if I wanted to reset structure, I could just double click that as well. I'm going to pull that back up. And I think so far I've got a pretty decent looking base photo, and now I'm into color. So you've got the ability to customize color, and if you have a raw file, you're going to have this drop-down menu that says As Shot. You can come through here, and as you hover over it, you'll kind of see what some of these different options look like. So cloudy, to me, these don't look so great. Shade looks really yellow. Tungsten's way too blue. That's like super blue. I tend to leave it as shot, and then what I like to do is come in and customize the sliders. Again, it's personal preference, and I think that's what's so great about being able to manually adjust these things is you choose, you're driving, you're choosing the direction you're going, and you're customizing the controls. You just have different ways of getting there. You can choose as shot, and maybe you really like daylight. It's got a little bit of blue, which I kind of like, but I'm going to leave it as shot and customize that in a moment. You also here have the ability to come in with the eyedropper. So you can come in here and click on an area that you think is gray, and it'll adjust the temperature accordingly. So if I click on the sky, you'll see it does that. But if I come over here and click on this and say that's gray, it's going to adjust the color accordingly. I'm going to go back to as shot, and what I tend to do is for a scene like this, I kind of like a little bit more blue. Again, personal preference, and feel free to disagree. I tend to move the temperature left and tint right. Again, just a personal preference. I sometimes move saturation a little bit, but mostly I will move vibrance because that will bump up some of the non-dominant colors and give them a little bit of kick, whereas saturation is really going to make it look potentially over the top depending on how far you drag the slider. Now, if this is a portrait, you can click here to reduce the vibrance on the skin so that any skin tones are not going to be heavily influenced by that color adjustment that you made. And the purity here will help maintain the purity of the highlights and shadows, meaning a lot of that color will not be added to that. So if I click on highlights and drag the slider here, you can see I can adjust that, and the same for shadows. And so you can see some of that blue is coming out of those areas, which actually this is almost starting to look a little bit like a monochrome. Not my intention, but I'm going to pull this back. But that's a great way to maintain control over how the photo looks. So if you're shooting a nature scene that has water in it, maybe a waterfall that's a long exposure and has some white in it, you could come in and drag the purity of the highlights to the right to remove any color cast that you may get from temperature, saturation, and vibrance, and remove that from that area. So again, great control over photo, and that's how I would use those particular sliders. So I'm finished with tone and color. I like what we've got. I'm going to go ahead and close that. Details gets into, as the name implies, applying detail to the photo, but also allowing you to reduce noise. So first you click on the little radio button there and turn on the detail slider, and then you have the amount and threshold to increase the sharpening, and then you also have noise reduction here, both luminance noise reduction, then you've got color noise reduction. This is powerful and it works well. So that's a quickie on the details. I'm going to go ahead and turn that off because what I want to get to next here is lens correction. So this is an amazing bit of capability to have. And as you see, as I turn that on, let me turn that off again. There's the before, and as I turned it on, it's recognizing my camera and my lens, and it's applying corrections based on that. So again, you'll see the distortion has changed. There it is before, and there it is after, but also the photo got a little bit brighter. And if you notice, there's a little bit of a lens vignette from this lens that's in the base photo, and when I turn this on, you can see those edges where the vignette would be applied have kind of been reduced. So if you come over here, you can see that you've got options, galore. You can change these as necessary, but it defaulted to Sony, which is what I shot with, and it defaulted to this lens, which is the 16 to 35 f4 wide angle lens, which is my Sony wide angle lens. So if I click on that, you can see I've got honestly a whole lot of different options that I could choose if I wanted to adjust that. Speaking of adjustments, you have the ability here to click on manual and go in here and make adjustments to distortion. So you can increase or decrease, basically there's pin cushion and barrel distortion, and this slider will help you adjust that. Now keep in mind, if you turn that on and your camera and lens are being recognized, that is being applied. So this would be in addition to what's already been added based on the built-in lens profile. You've also got fringing and things like that, so very powerful. It's an amazing thing to have. I love that you have all these camera makes to choose from. I mean, I have a GoPro. I could go do that. I've got old photos taken with my Nikon and my Olympus. I could get in there and find the correct things there. Various lenses. It's super powerful. You've got a lot of flexibility there, but really what it comes down to is helping you by adding the camera and lens profiles. It's going to help you correct anything that may be considered, incorrect in the photo. In other words, it's going to help remove distortion, for example, that's perhaps common. This being a wide angle lens, it's fairly common to have some distortion in a wide angle lens. And I think the correction of that, again, there it is before and there it is after. I think that looks great, to be honest. And I'm going to go ahead and leave that section on. So I've adjusted tone and color, and I've adjusted based on the lens correction. The last section is transform. So once again, you click the radio button to turn it on. You've got all kinds of things here. Now, this is not really a great photo to demonstrate this. And in fact, I think I may have to come back and do a video on transform because you have so much you can do here. But basically, keystoning, if you shoot close, so architecture is a great example. If you're shooting a structure and you're really close, and you're shooting it with a wide angle lens, what you'll often find is that things are kind of out of sorts, right? Like the buildings, the lines don't add up. The keystoning allows you to come in and basically draw the shape and say, hey, these verticals should be straight, and it allows you to correct for those automatically. If you'd like to see a demo video on that capability, I'm more than happy to do that. So I just kind of wanted to cover at a high level what it does, and I wanted to walk through how I would typically edit my RAW file using tone and color, details, and lens correction. This, let me show you my preview. If I turn that off, that's how I started. And then if I go back to where I am, that's where I am. So I can also show you this sliding window here that gives you an idea of kind of what edits have been applied to the photo. I mean, I think it looks crisp. I think it looks clear. I think the light distribution looks amazing. I think the distortion adjustments for lens correction help. I think the colors look nice. This is how I would go through and basically adjust my RAW file and basically prep it before I move into the next tab, which is effects. Now, effects is not what I'm going to get into, but my suggested workflow in On1 is to develop your RAW file, then go to effects for any customization, and then go into local for any fine tuning. And I'll walk through this in future videos because I will be doing more. But that's a walkthrough of what you can do in the develop tool or develop panel here in On1 Photo RAW 2021. Very powerful, very fun, very easy to use, quite honestly, but it's a great way to get you started. And in many cases, like in this photo, I don't really know that there's a whole lot more that I would do to edit the photo. There might be some fun things I would do on the effects tab just to customize the look a little bit, but honestly, I'm quite happy with that. That's the power and the beauty of the Develop tab in Photo RAW. Hope that it helps. Hope it gives you a good idea of what you can do. And I'll be back with more. And if there's other things you want me to address about On1, as I'm continuing to work my way through all the powerful capabilities of this product, and as I'm testing it out as a replacement for Lightroom for me, which is what I'm doing, I'll be sure to kind of work through that, which I'm able to work through. So thank you for watching, my friends. Hope this gives you a good idea of how I walk through adjusting and prepping my RAW files in On1 Photo RAW. And thanks for watching, my friends. I'll see you really soon. You guys take care of yourselves out there, and adios.